Hello and welcome to another episode of my timeline. In today's episode, we're going to do a deep dive into my comment section. Here, I want to build a community of people that just want to just talk and have a chit chat about something that we all don't have the answers to. There is so many things that are like open questions, and I want this to be a community where we can all educate each other and just be very positive, because some people just don't know, and I don't know everything. Someone might know something more than me. Let's take a look at this comment that was left under my last video talking about Brexit. Let's begin. We keep hearing that Michael Gove lied in this video, but if you can hear over the pop music, nowhere can we hear even one lie identified. Michael Gove told the truth when he said, if you are ordinarily resident in an EU country, then the right to medical care and ability to continue living in your foreign property is guaranteed. This is the truth. It is clear. However, that the woman asking the question, a Tory voter with lots of money and a property in the south of France, that she lives in England and is not a resident of France, this old woman seems to deliberately misunderstand Michael Gove as she smiles at his flirtatious remark about her looking extremely young, does not hear his qualification that the rights he is speaking of only apply to those who are registered residents in an EU country. Thank you for your comment. It was a great comment. But I wanted to just dig a little deeper into your comment, and it sent me down a bit of a rabbit hole, researching and finding out how does the EU work. I know about the Shenzhen, I think it's called, zones. So there's different rules of travel throughout Europe and Asia, in terms of agreements made with different countries, different groups of countries, and so forth. So there are rules of these travels. There are rules of residency. How do you become a resident of a country, etc. So the next few clips, you're going to see a few things that I've found, and I'll break that down as we go. But first, I want to play you the full exchange between Michael and this lady, her question, and so we can listen to it ourselves and, really listen and find out if he answered her question, because that's the first thing. She asked a question and we want to know if he answered it correctly, or he needs some sort of dance around answer like politicians do.
Lynn Chandler here on the front row. Lynn is a part-time historian. She owns an apartment in France. Hello to you, Lynn. Thank you for joining us. What's your question?
Thank you. Good evening. As Kate says, I own a small retirement apartment in France. So my question is, what will be the consequences of a leave vote for the hundreds of thousands of Brits across Europe who own homes?
Whereabouts in France is your apartment?
South of France.
In the south of France.
West coast.
Yes. No, I've got friends who live in France as well, and one of the things is that many of them are people, or they have homes in France. Many of them are voting in favour of Britain leaving the European Union because they think it's in Britain's interest, and they also know that there are international laws and international rules that mean that if you're legally and ordinarily resident in another country, then even if your home country votes to leave the European Union, all your rights, all your privileges are carried on and are respected. So the one thing I would say to you, and indeed to everyone who enjoys living and who enjoys the prospect of retirement, which I suspect is many years hence, enjoys thinking about retirement, the one thing is that your investment will be safe and your future will be safe, whatever the decision on June the 23rd.
So that was his answer, but let us go back and listen to her question, we have to listen to her question because hers had very interesting key words. Let's go back and listen to it again.
Thank you. Good evening. As Kate says, I own a small retirement apartment in France. So my question is, what will be the consequences of a leave vote for the hundreds of thousands of Brits across Europe who own homes?
If you listen closely, you've probably heard her say Brit citizens, and she did not say ordinarily residents of these other countries outside of Europe. Meaning these people prioritize their British citizenship and they're not looking for dual citizenship anywhere else. If anything, they just want the right to live in these places, and she wants to know what will happen to these people with these residents. Now, I don't think, and this is where my previous video really explains that Nigel said that these politicians did not make it clear enough, or they didn't do enough digging and establishing groundwork for how these things would work. Clearly, if someone owns property somewhere else, the smart thing to do, if you don't have any kind of like ordinarily residents, which we'll talk about later on, you would have to sell the property because you no longer have the right to own it, because you don't have the same jurisdiction to owning it, because you're no longer in the EU, which was the grounds under which you bought the property. And so, yeah, we're gonna go to the next clip, and I'm going to show that what an ordinarily registered person in, say, for example, Spain would look like. Before we get into what would be required for an ordinary residency in, say, for example, Spain, I want to define what ordinarily means. Ordinarily, based on this dictionary Google search I did, most of the time it means generally, it means usually. And keeping that in mind, since the EU is such a specific and niche group, it isn't most of the world. It's a small specific group. And so the rights and privileges that EU countries have is not ordinary. It's just very specific. Ordinary, I would consider just a general, as they said. It means generally. So generally, I would guess, refers to the rest of the world. That's the general rule for everyone, because that's the vast majority of the people. And so here is what the general rule is for everyone else. In this blog by a law attorney that's focused on immigration in Spain, they give a description of how to become a permanent resident in Spain. And they say in order to achieve this, you have to be living in the country for a period of 5 uninterrupted years. When they fulfill this specific condition, they can apply for a permanent residency and then gain the right to live for the rest of their lives in the country. And so here I just want to give just a brief reminder of what are the perks and the privileges of being a part of the EU and what it allows for EU participants, that freedom to move through different countries, live in different countries. And so this gives a bit of a description of after the 3 months, you can apply for your registry and you get your registry certificate. And so it allows you the ability to stay. And so when people join the EU, no one's thinking they're going to leave because these privileges are pretty darn good. So this is just a bit of what that is. And so Spain also have a bit of a description of how EU residents, how they are able to stay in Spain long term. And the same website that I went to gives a bit of what you need in order to become a resident and to live in Spain as an EU member. They give a bit description, and that's what this is here. So here we're looking at the visa requirements once you have a French passport. I picked French residents because they are still part of the EU, and I want you to have a sense of what is going on. If you look at the different countries, you see what the visa requirements are and how long you can stay. If you look closely, you see it comes up quite a bit. You will see freedom of movement, unlimited stay. And these are all countries that are part of the EU. And, you know, it's either you're in or you're out. There's no gray area. Because at the end of the day, the EU has to make it very clear. They have to make it very clear that when you're in, these are the privileges. When you're out, you're like everyone else. And I don't think England necessarily expressed that to their citizens the best that they can. You know, you can make little deals with specific countries, but that takes years to happen. That is not something that happens overnight. And so the EU has to make it worth these countries' while to stay in the EU. And that is what you see here with France. You know, unlimited stay, you can move around and you can stay in these countries, no problem. It's not an issue. And so in the next clip, you're going to see what the visa requirements are for a person with a British passport. And so that is what we're looking at right now. And if you look through, you will see the same countries that France has as free movement. It's not the same for England anymore. That privilege is gone. So you're in the general, or as he said, the ordinarily group of nations. You no longer have that EU privilege. England would have to go to each and every individual country to make a specific rule, and that's how all of these requirements were done. Hungary, Iceland, India, all of these countries, these different countries went to them, England included, went to these places to come up with these rules as to how people can stay, how long they can stay, what are the requirements. This was all done, over the years for these different countries that are not in the EU. So, this is just a bit of a description of what the English people have bought into. Okay, so let's tie this all back in a bow to the person that made this comment. The reason why I said he lied to this lady is because while the word lie means tell false truth, it also means negating the truth, right? So he did not answer her question completely. He answered another question. If she had asked, sir, I'm a resident in France, I own property in France, I'm a British citizen, would this affect me? That was the question he answered. She did not mention that she was a resident in France. She said she owned property in France and she's a British citizen. She said two things, and that is what he did not answer. Now, if he was to answer her question specifically, he would either have to do one of two things. He would have to tell a straight up lie, or two, he would have to tell her the truth, which would discourage her fully from leaving the EU. Because the truth would mean, as I explained in this video very clearly, that she would have to fulfill specific rules in order to become a French resident as a person that is no longer a member of an EU nation. And that is, you'd have to spend 5 uninterrupted years in, well, this was for Spain, sorry. This is not for France. But say, for example, if it was Spain, she would have to spend 5 uninterrupted years in Spain. And that's it. I'm thankful that you asked the question, because it really allowed me to do a deep dive into really what was the question asked, what was his answer, and how this is something that is well known throughout the world, that politicians find ways to maneuver and intertwine their answers in such a way that they end up not answering the question, as you will see here.
In this election,
no, you're making a polemical case for a particular viewpoint.
No, I'm not. I'm asking you for the truth. Do you believe in the truth in an election campaign, Mr. Gove? Do you believe in telling the truth?
Because you have a particular outlook, because you...
I don't have a particular outlook. This is scrutiny, Mr. Gove. Tell me this then. 40 new hospitals. Is that true or false? Mr. Boris Johnson says 40 new hospitals. That's
yes,
true.
It is. But I think a critical thing...
You think it's true?
I think a critical thing, Kieran, is that if you want to have a proper conversation...
And so, as you see in the last clip, him trying to dance around the question by accusing the journalist of being a specific way, and all the person is trying to do is to do their job. If he was a likable politician, someone that is straight and direct and is doing a good job, a person would ask you a question, you answer it, and that the people would love the answer, because you're doing what you need to do. You're doing all the work that is required. This is why I wonder if politicians, they have this specific politician book that they have to all put their hand on once they get into politics, that they have to be a dance around the truth person. Thank you for your comment, and it allowed me to really do a deep dive into what's really going on, laws and regulations of people who are in the EU, people who are not in the EU, and what is required for them to become residents. So that allowed me to do research and to grow my knowledge. I really want this to be a community, and I can tell you like to express yourself and listen to videos like this. And this is what I hope for this channel, a community of people who would do research. We would do research on things that we probably don't even know. And so just the use of specific words politicians would use, ordinarily residents, that kind of triggered in my head that he's talking about something completely different. So I like this kind of banter. If you want more of this, please do subscribe. And the more you comment, the more we build our community here, the more opportunities we all can have on this channel. You can probably even call me, and we can do more stuff around Brexit and just learn and grow as a person of the world, So thanks again, and let's catch each other on the next video. Have a good one. Bye-bye.